Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes, and welcome back to the Yo Video Games podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Andrew.
And once again, thank you to all our generous patrons who've kept us going for over 350 episodes.
Yeah, if you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames podcast. Dude of the week is Karoy35. Thank you, Karoy35. He's also a producer.
Damn right.
So double thank you, sir. And in addition to our patrons, we have... I forgot the word.
A sponsor.
A sponsor.
A friend and a sponsor. And something that will keep you feeling fresh.
I'm sick and I haven't slept in 24 hours. All right.
Anyways, we're talking about Manscaped, by the way, because it is fresh ball fall. Which Andrew, I'm going to say this time, so Andrew's going to say free ball fall because
it's both, really,
because of his voyeuristic tendencies. We promote healthy, clean balls, not illegal balls. So, if you want your balls to be clean, healthy, and trimmed, you can check out the Performance Package.
4.0, yeah.
4.0, which comes with a whole bag of goodies for your goodies.
The shed, as they call it.
Big one being, of course, the Lawnmower 4.0, which, that helps you keep everything all nice and trimmed. It's got a light on it. It's got even a travel mode, multiple sizes, replaceable blades, of course. And, of course, afterwards, there's what we really love, the Crop Preserver and the Crop Reviver. Which is a little spray for like an anytime spray, but the preserver is a lotion, for right after that shower. Preserve that freshness.
Rub it on, really massage your balls. Have some
your freshly trimmed trees, or I guess tree. You might have trees. Who knows? Who am I to judge?
You could have dreads down there. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe you're an echidna.
But we're both really big fans of it. Even this time of year, summer is the easy time to talk about your balls smelling rough, but winter's important there too. You're going to be wearing warmer clothes. You might sweat down there. You get lucky. You don't want to take off your pants and have swamp.
And if you're in the southern hemisphere or hell, Southwest U.S., it's still hot.
It's still hot as shit. But if you're interested in checking out any of their products, please head over to manscaped.com. Use our code YoVG, all caps, for 20% off and free shipping worldwide. That's YoVG, all caps, at manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping worldwide. Your balls will thank you.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of echidnas, that transitions very nicely into the subject for today's episode, which we want to talk about, which was games that got worse over time. And how does this equate to echidnas? Because Sonic Frontiers has an echidna in it.
Sonic Frontiers. I knew you were going to bring Sonic Frontiers.
I was very happy to avoid it, but then, the Muffin Man was like, no, I'm buying this for you because I said I wasn't going to buy it. And Steve and Kenny went on this bit on stream, of like, well, you're not going to play it. And so Muffin Man buys it for me.
They didn't play it. They didn't play it.
Yeah, they didn't play it either. So, but I'm the Sonic fan because I got the Sonic and Knuckles logo behind me. So,
and you hate yourself.
I mean, I love classic Sonic. I've been very adamant about this. I love classic 2D Sonic. I don't like 3D Sonic. And why would I play an open world 3D Sonic? So Muffin Man buys it for me. And I mean, and here's an honest thing is like you play it and you're like, it's not that bad, actually. You're like, this is okay. It kind of fixes in a crude way, it fixes the big problem with 3D Sonics, and that is giving him space to run around in because it's a big open world now, right?
Right.
So you're not flying off of edges constantly, So it doesn't fix the problem of controls necessarily, but they actually have this whole list of things where you can adjust his top speed and his turn radius and stuff like that. So they have all these like control quality of life, like you can actually adjust it a little bit.
Okay.
That's actually pretty nice. And again, but it doesn't make the controls good, but it does offer you the ability to sort of like tweak the speed a bit. And again, open environment means that, okay, you're not just running off the edge of the world or running into cliffs constantly. So it's a decent fix. It's not like fixing the core issue, but whatever. So you're playing it at first, you're like, this is actually okay. This is not bad, right? But then if you immediately get to a large scale enemy, like a Shadow of the Colossus style thing, and the camera does not know what to do, it constantly, and then it bugs out. It's bugs and camera glitches galore when you
Oof.
actually have to encounter big enemies. So then you're like, oh, here it is. But there's not a lot of them. So you kind of like, okay, it's like a little painful moment and then it's over. But as you play the game, you kind of realize, because there's like 5 islands and like 3 of them kind of look the same. And as you progress through it, you kind of realize, oh, it's actually all the same shit. Like nothing really changes. There's all these floating rails and floating platforms and springs and stuff. And the whole game is just go spin around on these rails, do this tiny little like sequence, like trick sequence, right? Of this floating in the middle of the air rail and springboard. And
Right.
you get a token, you get enough tokens, and then you can unlock the next little cutscene, and then the next little cutscene, and the next little cutscene. Do little air tricks, get tokens, do cutscene. And you just kind of like repeat that ad nauseum. And then you realize that as you're going through, like the environment, quote unquote, changes, but what you're doing doesn't. And it's still just floating rail guards and floating springboards that look exactly the same. They just here's a grassy Ireland looking island. Here's a desert. Here's a volcano. And it's like, okay, so it's just the same kind of landmass. You just take away vegetation the further you get into it.
Right.
And you're not actually doing anything different. You're still just like grinding on rails and bouncing off springboards to get little tokens.
Is it one of those games that bookends, like where like the first island will be great, the last island will be great, and everything in the middle you're not going to remember in a couple of weeks?
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally.
Oh man, that's rough.
And you kind of realize the environment plays no role in the game. Like they try to make it so in cutscenes, like when characters like, this looks like a ruins from this thing back at home. Do you think maybe the same people built it? Like, but who cares? Like it doesn't. That's just in the cutscene.
So nothing changes. Nothing. The environment doesn't have an effect on the type of puzzles or.
That's correct. That's the weird thing. It's like you're just actually doing the same type of mini puzzles. Activate a timer, run through some rings or some squares. Run across this grid tile, like light up in the order, like on every island. So it went from being like, okay, this is actually okay, to like, oh wait, we're just going to do the same thing from the first hour of gameplay the whole time. It's not going to change.
I don't know if that's more disappointing than if it was just a train wreck, or I guess
Right.
It's a positive step. It's still a positive step for 3D Sonics.
I guess it's a positive, but here's the thing: it becomes dull. Like that's the weird thing. It's like it's not this train wreck of like past 3D Sonics were. I mean, it is when you fight a large scale enemy, but like when you're not fighting a large scale enemy where the camera just does not know what to do, it's just dull.
That's like that's sort of what happened to me for Fallout 4, where like the beginning it's got like a cool hook where the beginning is sort of insane hook, right? You go into the vault.
Yeah.
Spoilers, I guess, if you haven't played it, but like, your wife gets killed and your kid gets taken, then you're stuck in this cryo tube, and then you wake up and you find out you're part of an experiment. Cool fucking hook. And then it sort of just peters out and gets sort of dull from there. Like I've played it for, I don't know, a dozen hours or something like that, doing side missions. But it just sort of becomes bleh.
And the weird thing is, I didn't even intend to know this, but I know the twist of the game because a lot of people didn't like the twist.
I never even got that far.
Do you want to know the twist?
Yeah, hit me. Fuck yeah.
The main villain is your son. That got taken away.
Do you kill him?
I think you have the option to.
That is a spanking.
Well, it's weird because like a lot of people were just kind of like, really? Like I guess it's foreshadow or it gets like obvious. I don't know what the problem was.
I'm sure it gets obvious eventually. I don't know. I didn't get that far into the game. I got to like like in main story, I got to where you go into the main baseball stadium that gets turned into a city. Part type thing, and then like I just lost interest. It's one of those games. Another game. Well, I don't know. This game was actually probably pretty bad, but it was a PS2 era game. I think you remember that game, State of Emergency.
Oh yes,
where you had like it held promise. Like it held such
Yeah, and everyone was doped up because it was Rockstar's next game after GTA 3, and everyone thought
right.
it was the next big thing.
Oh my god, I was so ready for this damn game, and I think I was like 14 or something like that. Yeah, and I just like I remember having the poster of it. It came in like PlayStation Magazine and shit. It was just like it was so good, and I got it. It's one of the few times I've actually stood in line for a game, and that's why never did it really all that much ever again. The next time I stood in line for a game, also a disappointment. Battlefront 2.
Was it 2 or 1? Because I remember we
2.
we went and we got Battlefront 1 because everyone was, and I felt like that was the last time I got peer pressured like a drug PSA commercial into getting Battlefront 1, and I played that game for like maybe a month or less, and I'm
Wait,
never
did they just call Battlefront 1? Battlefront 1's not the one that was on original Xbox, was it?
no.
Because they
Well, I mean,
they
so there was a Battlefront on Xbox One and 1 and 2 on Xbox, original Xbox and PS2, and then
right,
there was
okay.
the PS4 one. They rebooted it on PS4.
Right, okay, I got the PS4 one. For some reason, I was thinking that was Battlefront 2 in my head. But yeah, we
There was
played
a
that
Battlefront 2. That's the one that got all the political discourse because of all the pay to win
loot
shit, right?
boxes and shit. Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
so I'm thinking of Battlefront 1. Because we had several friends who were this be this greatest fucking game ever. You play as Jedi. You can play as Jedi. And
yeah.
then we played it for like a week, maybe, and then never touched it again. And I remember having one, I stood in line for that fucking game. And then I had the only one that was available was like a soft special edition that came with like artwork and shit. And so I
Mm.
just like had all this Battlefront bullshit for a while. Um, yeah, I mean that wasn't as big of a letdown as State of Emergency. State of Emergency is a big letdown. Turned into like nothing but weird fetch quests in a overrun mall.
Yeah,
You know what? You know what State of Emergency was? State of Emergency seemed like a proof of concept for what Dead Rising would be. Where
kind
they
of.
were
Yeah.
like, "Oh, this is a great idea if these were all zombies."
Here's what a
Dead
lot of people
Rising is
don't
boring.
don't know is that there is a State of Emergency 2.
Oh yeah,
It's
yeah,
not published by Rockstar.
right. They sold. Didn't they sell it? They
Yeah,
sold State of
like
Emergency.
because the developer was not the same developer as GTA, but
Right.
people just didn't know that. They just thought Rockstar, and
Mm.
when it came time for the second one, Rockstar was like, nope, like nothing, want nothing to do with it. So some smaller publisher published it with I think the same developer, but at that point there was so little hype because everyone felt bamboozled by State of Emergency 1.
It's if you guys don't know what we're talking about, which hey, fair. Google there's got to be YouTube of it State of Emergency gameplay or something.
Hmm.
Oh yeah,
It's
okay, so they've got like 45 minutes on some random channel. It's very samey. It doesn't, it doesn't even look good for a PS2 game.
I mean it's basically kind of like a Musuo with like really really shitty, early PS2 era graphics because
I guess yeah.
its whole claim to fame was that there was going to be so many characters running around on screen at once. But
Right,
yeah,
and they totally are.
you just kind of run around and just kill random people, like
And shoot
running
cops.
around. I don't know.
Uh
It was not a good game. That was the thing, is that like I didn't play it, but I remember very distinctly remember the hype surrounding it. And then it came out and everyone's like, it is repetitive and boring, and like you don't like it's not
oh,
really open world. Like
my favorite thing is people were like, it's gonna be like brutal. You're gonna be looting and burning down city blocks, and see, and really all it is like fetch quests.
yeah.
It's just get this thing to this thing, and like sometimes 5 cops are gonna be shooting at you full auto with pistols, and you're just gonna soak that shit up, go over there, and beat the hell out of them. Like, it's not good, but the promise it held was. I got bamboozled. I got
It
taken
it,
for
it
a ride.
It
Okay.
very much was a lot like, and people are going to hate me on this because there's some weird, odd fandom, probably all McMuscles followers, of Brute Force on Xbox because everyone was hyped for Brute Force following Halo
Brute
on
Force is kind of
Xbox.
fun though.
No, it wasn't.
I played Brute Force co-op with
Co-op, you can
Rodney.
kind of have some fun with it, I will
Yeah, I
say,
had a
but
great
like,
time co-op.
yeah, Brute Force, third-person gator shooter. Well, I mean, one of the characters is a bipedal humanoid gator man,
Yeah,
and that's all anyone remembers the game for.
that's pretty much all I remember about the game. Yeah. No, I remember having a great time with that. And Spec Ops: The Line, also not a great game unless you're playing it co-op. Then you can have a great time.
The 360 or PS4 era Spec Ops.
No, maybe I'm thinking of a different.
I think it goes the original Spec Ops, like
Maybe
on
what was the
GameCube.
what was the GameCube one?
I
Was
think it's
that
just
that
Spec
wasn't The
Ops.
Line? That was just Spec Ops.
Like
Yeah,
Desert Combat was like
yeah,
Spec Ops Desert Combat. And there were like two of them,
yeah.
and
And
they
we were
had
playing.
4-player co-op.
Right. Yeah, had a great time in 4-player co-op. You could not pay me to play that game alone, but it
Oh
was
yeah, because I
a
mean,
great
like
time co-op.
it looked old and rough even for the time it
Oh
came out,
yeah.
but it had 4-player co-op.
Oh yeah.
And it was kind of janky, but again, 4-player co-op.
Yeah, and it's the type
So
of jank that makes 4-player co-op frustrating if you're not with good friends and extremely stupid funny if you're with good friends.
well, I remember very distinctly we were at a mutual friend's house doing 4-player co-op, and three of us were trying to do the mission, and we just kept losing because the fourth guy was just not there to back us up.
Yeah.
Alberto.
Yeah, I know who you're
And
talking
where
about.
was Alberto? He was out. He wandered backwards from the start, and he was just shooting random shepherds in the hills.
Yeah, he killed everybody with a rocket launcher once. Fucking guy. Yeah, some would say that he really spiced that game up, but mostly it was just for making people angry. Okay, I have a sort of controversial take here, because it's still it's a good game. I think some would argue that it's a great game, but I don't think anyone could argue against me on saying that the beginning of the game holds so much more promise than the rest of the game, and that would
Yeah,
be Metal Gear Solid 2.
yeah,
You play the first part of the game and you're hyped up. Yeah, there's some weird fuckery when they reveal the Ray and Ocelot and shit. But then you switch over to Raiden, and I would argue that the game's still good, but it doesn't it's not as good as that first part of the game. First part of
Uh,
the game is strong as hell.
I think you're talking more than just the Raiden reveal, like because
Right.
everyone thinks, oh, you're just talking about switching, right? You didn't like playing as Raiden.
No, 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 no. I'm saying like things literally it just wasn't as interesting.
Right, and I'll argue the same thing because it's not the Raiden switchover; it's the fact that the first level takes place on that tanker in the stormy ocean, right, or whatever.
And you're trapped and you
hmm
feel yeah.
The rest of the game takes place basically on an oil rig on a
Right.
sunny day. The location of two
It's so
just
boring.
isn't interesting. It's a big
Right.
orange oil rig. I
And
mean,
also Ray, like Metal Gear Ray is more interesting in the confines of that ship
mm,
and scary in the confines of that ship than it actually is when you're out on, the big ocean.
yeah, and you're like on top of Arsenal gear, big shell or whatever, and just a bunch of them jumping on and off.
Right. Like
Um,
it's not as scary. I think part of the reason why Metal Gear Rex was as scary as it was also is because you were in kind of a closed environment, so it felt like it was constantly visually dominating you.
yeah, and you have to like crawl around it when it's inactive and stuff. Like they build it up to it and stuff as well. So I don't know.
Right.
And that's the thing is, I think it's fair to say like there are great games that they basically start out like a 10 out of 10, but they end as an 8 or a 9.
Right. Or
Where there's
even a 7 or an 8.
yeah, and like they're still good,
Yeah.
but they're not as good as maybe the starting were. And some of this comes from the sort of the ye old vertical slice, which hasn't been a
Oh.
thing in the game industry for years now because of COVID. So they didn't have to make vertical slices. Although you could argue there's probably vertical slices being made for publishers and investors that we never hear or see about.
You
That's
could
probably
also
also true.
argue that the first section of Metal Gear Solid 2 is a vertical slice.
It is, and it's the one
Yeah.
they kept showing and had playable at E3,
Right.
for all the way up until launch. So it kind
So
of
everyone
was,
had high hopes for Solid Snake, and
yeah,
then you get switched over to Raiden in the most bland environment
yeah,
there could
just
possibly be.
yeah. It is, I really think it's just location that really kind of hurts too, and that's why 3 is really well regarded. It's because people love 3. This
Well, three's cool as hell.
yeah,
Three's a
but the
bonfire.
environment's cool too. Everything about it is cool. Like it's
Right.
not I'm on an oil rig in the ocean doing nothing, on a sunny day and like I slip on bird poop.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
So, one of the poster children for this has been, people say Resident Evil 4, which I disagree with. I would argue people forget how much good shit is on the island in RE4. People forget that, the island includes regenerators, it includes the Krauser fight, the Krauser knife fight, includes
Right.
the It boss battle, it includes Mike the helicopter pilot. Like, people forget how much cool shit is on the island, because the first part of the island is when JJ gets introduced and he has a big chain gun, and people are like, like, it's just like almost too much at once for a
But I
lot of
would
people.
also argue that if people are forgetting it, that's the point.
Well, I think people they don't forget the crazy cool shit on that. They just forget that that was on the island.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I
Okay.
think that happens a
That's
lot, where
fair.
people are like, oh yeah, that was on the island. Like, like, yes, all these cool moments you forgot because you just like that opening first 15 minutes or whatever, where you're just like, being pummeled with enemies all of a sudden. People are like, this is too much, so they think the island is nothing but like a third person shooter segment with machine guns and stuff. Like, it's not.
Like it's
But
a third person action. That's actually kind of the argument that you see a lot for Dead Space 3, is that
mm,
Dead Space 1 and 2 are horror games, and Dead Space 3 turns into more of an action game, and that's why like it held such promise and is a letdown. But
mm.
I remember Dead Space 3 starting pretty strong, but I actually don't remember a lot of Dead Space 3.
I know it had co-op. I know it had microtransactions, as
Right.
was the style at the time.
I actually sort of feel bad because I like Dead Space, or yeah, I like Dead Space a lot. Dead Space 2 is still good. But yeah, genuinely I'm sort of blanking on Dead Space 3. That could also just be because I'm sick and I've got like that sinus pain that
No,
makes
I mean,
thinking
that's
hard,
that's a
but
fairly common consensus. I feel.
and now you got
Um,
Callisto Protocol, Dead Space 4 coming out.
right, and then same time, Dead Space remake, from EA, being petty about Dead Space creator leaving them.
Yeah.
Um, Although they're probably the ones who got rid of them. Uh, there is another sort of it feels like the edgelords say this, and although I actually happen to 100% agree, I think Breath of the Wild is a game that absolutely ends weaker than it starts.
You
Um,
think so?
I think the first, and to be granted, I say the first 20 hours. For some people, it's far less. We could say 10, you could say 15. I would say the first 20 hours, maybe 15 hours of that game are magical.
Okay.
I think they're great. I think you hit a point where you're just like, I'm fucking done with this game. To be fair to the game, you can end it anytime you want. You can just go to the last area any point. So when the magic wears off,
You just
you
go
can
end
just
it.
go
Yeah.
finish the game.
Well, I would argue that that is a game that bookends, where it's
Mm,
like the
that's also
beginning,
fair.
yeah,
Yeah.
the beginning hours are phenomenal, the last hours are phenomenal. The middle hours are kind of whatever you make of it. Uh, and I don't know if it's fair to say that that means that it peters off and ends weaker than it starts,
Mm,
because that could also just be the promise of a new Zelda game, right? You could say that
yeah.
about any Zelda game. It's like the promise was so good and it's so good when it starts, but Majora's Mask really ends weak. Like you,
Nobody would say that, but like, I get what you're saying.
yeah, you could
And
pick any of them and just say
Wind
that shit.
Waker's the same way, where it's like it really takes a shit in like
Well, it
the
drags and
second to like last third of the game, but the ending's very strong. Last boss fight's pretty,
yeah,
pretty good, really good actually. So like, and then in a sense, that's more of a bookend.
right.
Um, but I think Breath of the Wild to me was like one, but like it's kind of different, where it's like, okay, it's not like a game that just kind of slopes. It's like you said, it's a bookend experience.
It dips and then, well, here's one which neither of us have played, or at least I haven't played enough of it. I think the most I've ever played of it was like maybe the first hour. So I'm not allowed to say this, but I feel confident in saying Death Stranding is a game that starts out with a lot. Like people really love the
I know
beginning.
a lot of people felt that way about Death
Yeah.
Stranding.
Like I feel like I've seen so many people say like Death Stranding starts so strong and like you have so much promise and then just like Like, it's just a disappointing fart after that. But I haven't played enough of it. I maybe an hour, maybe it's and I wasn't even playing the beginning, so I'm not the guy
There's
that can
definitely
say
one
that.
I
But
feel like a lot of people felt that way, where it's like it started out kind of weird and interesting, but they were just tired of it by the end of it.
well, there's a lot of games that have like a hook like that. Like I was saying with Fallout 4, it's got like
Mm,
such a strong hook. I would even argue that's like Metal Gear Solid 2 has that kind of hook where the boat just seems to really like lay this serious foundation, and then you switch into something that's Fallout 4. Mostly the
yeah,
problem with Fallout 4 is it becomes sort of samey for the rest of the time you're doing it. Like there's
yeah,
no demarcation to where the story really seems to take off and
yeah, and like the gameplay hook isn't strong enough to carry it for the entirety of the duration
right.
of the game. In which case, maybe the game just should have been shorter. Um,
Well, actually, maybe a game I don't necessarily agree with this, but I feel like you'll agree with this is probably Skyrim. Skyrim starts pretty strong and has you feeling like, oh fuck,
hmm,
this rebellion and a dragon attacked and I can speak
yeah,
the dragon language and then it sort of fizzles for some people. I like Skyrim,
I
played
don't know how
shit
it
out of Skyrim.
ends, honestly, though, so I can't really give a fair assessment of it.
Oh, fair enough. I mean, I like it, so I'm biased, so I'm not going to say that it necessarily fizzles out, but it is another one that has like a really strong
Mhm.
beginning, like a strong first act, and then you could argue that it sort of loses its way. But to be fair, sort of with the Zelda thing or Breath of the Wild thing, any game, and actually, I guess even to an extent, Fallout 4, any game that is open world, you sort of can't hold that necessarily against the game because
Yeah.
momentum can die for any number of reasons for you.
Mhm.
One of the complaints that I had about Cyberpunk, right, is that momentum could die on you. But also, it's not fair for me to say that if I'm following the story fairly
Yeah, like,
closely,
and then there's a thing of like, okay, well, like it got boring in the middle. I'm like, well, did you go and do side quests? Yeah, well, then that's not really the crit path, right? Like, how do you judge
Right.
that? Where it's like, okay, if you just stuck to the main storyline, story beats, it was actually paced very well. It's the fact that you went off on and did a bunch of boring other side quests, then you got bored of the game. Is that the game's fault? I'm like, I kind of just
Because there's
by
boring side
because
quests.
the side
Yeah.
quests are boring, right? So okay, so
Right.
that's kind of the game's fault, or rather, they designed a really good narrative, flow through from beginning to end of the main story, and then they just sort of like padded it with crap in the like on the side. So that's kind of like a weird thing where it's like I guess you could guess to say the game kind of got worse or got duller, but because the side content wasn't anywhere near as good as the main content.
Well,
Um,
interesting enough, like The Witcher 3 is like I played very few of the side quests.
hmm,
You know, I did some of the more interesting ones, like ones where I heard them and I was like, that sounds fucking interesting. I jumped off, but I didn't do by any means every single side
yeah, yeah,
quest.
yeah.
And so there is great momentum even for the DLC campaigns and stuff. Um, I wonder if it's just like if you have a completionist attitude, will you lose interest in a game anyway? Like
Yeah.
if you really have to do every side quest to make sure you do it, you want to 100 it on the first time you play it, are you going to lose interest in that game anyway? I don't know. Kind of
Hard to
interesting though.
say. Well, here's an interesting one because the Game Awards did get announced. Um, for the nominees, I should say, of those recording of
Right.
this for what year are we in 2022?
That's what they're
and
telling me, but honestly, it
yeah,
doesn't feel like that.
and here's the interesting one is like we could actually I feel like this argument's good for pretty much all the game of the year nods. So you got Elden Ring.
Mm, right.
I would argue actually kind like not descends, but I would say the last 10% of the game where you go up into the snowy area, the giant's footsteps, I would say that's not interesting. Granted, there is a whole nother route you can go if you want to go for a completely different ending. But I would say the last tiny chunk of Elden Ring, not that interesting. The fire giant boss fight is a travesty of camera work. Um, but then like the last couple of boss fights after that are actually really cool. So um, maybe. maybe, but I don't know. God of War Ragnarok, I'm still going through it. I feel like it's going to be a bookend game because I know some people are a little iffy on the really slow burn middle sections of that game storyline.
I think I'm in the middle sections right now.
Um, so that to me remains to be seen. Horizon's a big one where I actually would almost argue opposite. It's because a lot of people play it and they're like, it's just more of the same. And I feel like it almost does a little bit of disservice because it starts the game with you literally in the area you ended the last game in. So you're in Utah and the
Right.
game ends, on like Channel Islands.
In Svets.
And it's kind of one of these weird things where it's like, okay, all the really cool, interesting new areas are way later. So it's got a weird. I don't actually argue Horizon doesn't get worse. Horizon is like the coolest shit is at the end, but then you got to tell people they got to play through the same old shit they've been going through for like the
Right.
first few hours.
I didn't really think about Horizon 2 when I thought about this because I overall liked the game.
Yeah, I will say the last boss is really weak. Um,
Yeah.
it's poorly designed because it's the last boss. Like basically, like any skills you spec'd into that weren't just raw arrows are worthless. This thing is only vulnerable to armor piercing arrows in the gut. That's it. Anything else
Right.
you leveled up or did, who cares? Doesn't matter. So it's a really weird design choice for the last boss.
And I would also argue that the last boss is sort of just easy if you spec'd into
Yeah, well,
arrows and
at
stuff.
first it was hard, and then like I realized what it wanted. I'm like, oh, that's it. And then I was like, oh, that's actually not that bad at all. Like, oh well,
Yeah, it's
shit.
not terrible.
Why did I upgrade anything else?
Although now
So
that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, why did the first half of the game take place in the old area?
I don't know, like to have like a flow through. It's like the reverse of what we're talking about a bit.
To be fair,
Straight.
it wasn't the first half of the game though. It wasn't.
Hmm.
It was only like, maybe 10% of the game takes place in that first area.
Yeah. Well, then you get like the option to like go towards like Vegas and forget where else. I don't know. It gets better.
Yeah.
It's a weird one that gets better. I don't know. Stray, I don't think has any of that similar problem at all because it's so short. I don't really think it gets worse. I still think the best part is when you actually have an offensive capability in Stray with the UV light, but that goes away. But Stray is not suffer from that at all, really. I think it's because of the shortness of it. It's like this perfect little length,
Yeah,
whatever.
hard to peter off when you have, very little playtime.
4 to 5 hours of gameplay.
Right.
I did not play Plague Tale Requiem or whatever, so I have no idea.
I didn't either, but now I remember seeing it and being like, "Oh, that looks really interesting," and then hearing nothing about it. And then like this year it's in the Game Awards and I was like, "Oh yeah, I was interested in playing that."
I think it's on Game Pass, possibly.
I may have to check that out because I actually thought it looked really interesting. And seeing that it's like nominated for Game of the Year, I'm shocked that I just basically didn't see anything on it. Like I didn't hear about streamers playing it. I didn't
Yeah.
see
I
anything on
know it
YouTube
was
about.
a media darling. Like I knew media was really hyped for some reason. I remember from
Really?
people I knew and who do like journalism were all like, yeah, they're really excited about this game, and I'm like, they're the only ones I hear about it. So it's almost like you'd almost call it like an Oscar baity type of game.
Hmm.
It's got graphics. It's got really nice graphics
It's got really nice
with all the
graphics.
all the swarms of rats moving
Yeah,
around it.
everybody
And then
loves swarms of rats.
yeah, and then the other big game of the year, Xenoblade 3, somehow up for Game of the Year award.
I see who you're voting for.
I already did, of course. I don't think the gameplay gets bad at all. I will say narratively, it feels like it doesn't have the twists that the previous two games did. It kind of
Right.
plays it like the story is kind of played straight. There's a couple twists, but it plays it straight all the way through, and that threw some Xeno fans like myself off. Where I'm like, I was kind of expecting a lot more like twists and turns to the story, but nah, not really. It's it sticks to its story the whole way through for the most part. Like a couple
I don't
things
know if
happen,
that's
but
necessarily a bad thing though. I
it's
I don't
not. It's
need
it's not.
twists, I guess. I just like I'm sort of trying to think of a game that really trails off. Where like it's really like great in the beginning and then just really sort of just trails off into obscurity.
I would honestly, I don't know about obscurity, but I would honestly say a lot of Final Fantasies have this issue where, like, you start off kind of excited or whatever for them, and then you just kind of fucking just lose
All the
interest.
memorable parts are in the beginning. And
Yeah.
you're just like, ugh.
Um, 15 is like this because there's a moment in 15 where you actually lose access to any bit of open world environment, and it is just a linear story driven, you know, quest line till the end of the game. That not great, but you can see how that was rushed. I gave up halfway through 12.
The bouncer's supposed to be like that too, right?
Yeah, I
Where the
was just kind of
beginning
like,
is like, oh fuck yeah.
yeah,
And then it's
Bouncer's
like
a great one where it's like, oh, cool, like yeah, a cool, a brand new PS2 game. It's got nice graphics. It's a beat 'em up. I like this. Then you realize there's no two player. Like, why is it beat 'em up with no two player?
yeah.
And it just kind of just gets boring and repetitive and like it. Yeah, like the sizzle and the flash of the beginning really loses its
Yeah, it really
luster by
just
the end of
goes
it.
away.
Yeah,
Like a damn magic trick, a terrible magic trick. Um, I'm I'm sort of like the more I thought about Skyrim, by the way, I was kind of like, Oblivion gets the same complaint too, where like Oblivion, you start in prison with a king.
yeah.
you know?
Well, that's believe that's the common thread of all Elder Scrolls is you start as a prisoner somewhere, and then something happens, and then that sets the wheels in motion of the story.
Right.
The same with 3 because you're a prisoner getting sent to that island. I watched a speed run of 3. Now, granted, this is not a great way to look at the quality of a game's pacing or anything, but like I watched a speed run of 3, and the guy literally just runs into like a cave in the middle of an island, and then like runs down to the bottom of this cave and like throws a MacGuffin into a well, and that's how it kills the last boss, something like that. And I was just thinking to myself, like, really, the last boss is just sitting in a fucking cave in the middle of the island? Like,
Yeah, I've
not
never
even like
heard
a
of
really
another game.
spectacular case. There's more Morrowind, by the way, part
I know.
3. But I remember thinking like, wow, really? That's the big lead up, huh?
And Breath
Huh.
of the Wild took that and ran with it.
They took it around with it, and they put a big old cloud, like a purple fart cloud around it. Ganon turns into a big Ganon or whatever. But yeah, it's kind of just like, huh, just
I'm
just
getting
hanging out there in
into
a cave, huh? Huh.
um did you have any game that you thought like started like super shitty and and ended good? I feel like if a game starts really shitty, I'm probably not going to find out if it ends well.
Yeah, that is also a thing I could say. And I know it's happened, and I'm trying to like rack my brain right now where like there was a game that I didn't like or wasn't that intrigued with at first and then like ended really, really well. Um hmm,
Well, for me, that was the Witcher series, I guess. Like the first time I played Witcher 2, I was like, nah. And then I played Witcher 3, and Witcher 3 was great. So it was a series.
mhm.
I had a very like fuck all this noise, and then really loved it. Oh, you know what? Another game that I've often seen people talk about, like it starts really strong and sort of peters out, and it's really beloved. But I feel like this is a fair criticism of it. Is RE3R.
Mhm.
Um, RE3 remake, I guess.
That's a
Just
good
Nemesis.
poster.
Yeah,
What a good poster child for this started out strong and then just ended
just
weak.
um. Well, I mean, Nemesis is really just kind of the perfect example of an enemy
Yeah.
that starts strong and then just ends.
Because the
Blech.
thing is, like at the very beginning, there is a small segment where he will openly chase you. Like he'll appear, or if you get too far away, he'll jump off. He'll reappear, like around you. It's in the demo even, um, but it's just this one segment near the beginning of the game where Nemesis will actually pursue you in normal gameplay areas. Everything after that, he is he's a scripted event. He is a fucking ride animatronic.
Right. Is that a response to people being too frustrated by Mr. X chasing him for all of 2 remake?
I'd hope not. I don't think so. My understanding is no. Um, but because like 3 starts in the city, starts with the Jill in the midst of the outbreak. It kind of starts more or less like the original.
Mhm.
But then the cuts come near the second half of the game. Like areas in the second half of RE3 original are the ones that get cut out of RE3 remake. So
Mm.
RE3 remake is the one. It feels like the more you get into it, the more you kind of realize they're just like scrapping shit. you know, I'm not.
Which RE3 was not a big game to begin with.
That's the other weird thing, right? Is
So
that
it's
like
like,
it was almost weird that you're cutting stuff out of an already short experience, but
right.
but yeah, like that one for me, like I wasn't super familiar with the original RE3. We went through it once, I beat it once, and so I do remember playing the game like, when do we gotta go to the clock tower? How come we're not in the clock tower? This is weird. But like for some people that was like really a big deal for them. Like, what the fuck? They cut out this whole area, and I was just like, I vaguely remember going to this one place at one point in time, and there were spiders there. Um,
right.
like
Yeah.
that's
For
not here.
for some reason, I remember there being a clock tower. Like, uh, this is actually a conversation I have with my brother because my brother's favorite RE is 3. Which I feel like is kind of rare for the original 3 to be somebody's favorite, but
Yeah,
um
usually, well, the reasons people pick that as their favorite usually involve horniness for some reason.
Jill be hot.
She's
Don't blame them.
strapped at the top of the tube skirt.
Yeah, maybe not the best for dealing with an outbreak, but I'll tell you what, very, very like maneuverable. You know, you could do a lot of movement and that.
Well, I mean,
Nothing
I think, okay,
restricting.
to be fair, I can see where some people might really like 3 because it's like 2 doesn't really involve the city that much. You just kind of run past a couple things in the beginning and then you're just in the police station for the rest of the time and then you go down, right? Where
Yeah,
3 is like, okay, here's what it was like on the surface in the midst of the whole city. So I can see where there's sort of appeal in that, but
I
it's
do
still
think
just
that's the actual reason he likes it. It's why everybody had high hopes for Outbreak.
hmm.
Um, and it just like that you could say that's one that kind of
Well, I mean, here's the thing. To be frank, like on the original PlayStation, it's still just FMV backgrounds.
right.
Um, and then PS2 only could do so much. Even with Outbreak, you're still like very small area scripted events. The technology wasn't really there to do a proper city, be involved in the whole city as it's going, everything's going to shit. But here's the thing, PS4 absolutely was there. The technology was there on PS4 to do a whole proper like city hellscape.
Right.
And the fact that 3 isn't that,
Well, to be fair, just the genre of horror, if you don't contain horror, if you don't make horror feel claustrophobic in a sense, it stops being horror real fast. It's
mm,
one of the arguments why the island isn't as scary or as good as the rest of RE4. RE4
true,
isn't
yeah.
terribly scary, but the island is probably the least scary part because it turns into, wide spaces and, it just doesn't feel contained anymore. Containment is a big part of it.
Yeah, and that's kind of why The Thing is one of the most perfect horror movies is the
Right.
isolation of it, the
You're
trappedness of it.
totally isolated, you're screwed. Um, that being said, in a city where it is totally locked down, streets are all screwed up. You can't, it's not like you can hop in a car and just drive out of town. You have to like work your way out of, you're escaping a city that's
Mhm.
turned into a hellhole prison. Um, I feel like there's a lot of opportunity to, in an Outbreak game, say, still do that claustrophobia, that isolation,
Yeah,
while also having an entire city going to shit around you. Because it should be terrifying to have to go out into the streets where
yeah.
there's zombies and crowds of people just, laying into each other.
Zombie U actually did this pretty well, actually.
Yes, it did.
Strangely enough.
Zombie U is what fighting zombies should be like because it is anxiety inducing.
Yeah.
Like it is scary to fight zombies, and more than one zombie is terrifying.
Yeah.
Um, now imagine a street full of that and angry people who don't know they're infected yet, or like half crazed people who are starting to be infected. And,
Yeah.
like there's a lot of opportunity there to do that. Maybe PS5 will do that's the Outbreak remake we'll get a PS5 and they'll be like, wow, the loading's so fast, we can just have city full of people.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that is like a good point as far as like you really need the, and they talked about this actually apparently in the developer diaries for Resident Evil 2 remake, where they originally thought of they're like, oh, it's kind of weird and silly. Like, we're gonna go over the police station. And then underneath it is sewers, and under that is a big fancy lab. And they thought maybe the lab should be somewhere else. Like, let's have a sequence where like you escape the police station and then you drive up to this mountain. And it was gonna be like a trolley lift that like lifted you to this lab. And they're like, that's stupid. If we have a thing where the characters get out of the city in a car, why would they bother?
Right.
So in their minds, they went like, that's stupid. We can't have them getting access to vehicles and leaving the city, or like getting out in the open the city. They're just going to leave. Any sensible person would just leave. So they're like, we have to keep it like dense and claustrophobic, and like, you going down this rabbit hole, which there you go. That's just design,
It's just going down the rabbit hole. Yeah.
So,
Although it would have been cool if the corporate headquarters to Umbrella was near the police station, because that's exactly what a giant corporation would do.
yeah.
And having, instead of going deep down underground, which is claustrophobic and very cool, and being in a sewer is dirty and mucky and gross.
Yeah.
But what if you had to go up a high rise that only has a stairwell and shit like that? Like that would also be pretty scary and isolating. I don't know. But there's a lot of things that RE3 Remake could have done to stop it from petering out, and it didn't do any of them, I guess is the point we're getting at. I want to say, like, there's games like No Man's Sky, which probably you couldn't even really say started strong, because that was mostly just a lie.
Yeah, well, I mean, it still had like, okay, you're exploring new planets and whatever, but like it was kind of the realization, the realization that like some of the aspects weren't there, but then like the original ending to No Man's Sky being what it was just kind of like, what the fuck, that's it.
Yeah, which I don't even remember off the top of my head. It's just like there's nothing, right? Or there's
like you get to the center of the universe and there's this big fucking zoom out, and they're like, congrats, you beat it.
Yeah. Ooh. A let down 3,000.
It was pretty rough like that.
I had such a great time. I bought that game used for like $10 or $15. Hadn't realized anything about it. Hadn't seen any of the promises. I was like listening to music and a podcast and just kind of exploring plans, having a great time, thinking that like, oh, I'm not doing the main story, but I'll find the main story. It wasn't until we talked about it where you're like, there's no main story. That is it. That is the game. And I was like, oh, okay. I think I played it one more time after that. It was a real bummer.
Yeah, that was it. Like that was kind of like the narrative.
I'm trying to think of a bigger bummer than that. Maybe Planet Side. Oh, Battlefield 2042 starts pretty strong, and then just fart noises for the rest of the game.
Can I say the entire Call of Duty franchise, like after COD 4?
Ooh, you're just saying like Call of Duty 4 was like, ooh, so good, and then
so good, and then like it wasn't like a drop off a cliff. It was just this steady decline after COD 4, to the point when we got to Call of Duty Ghosts, it was like flatlined.
All right, let's go there, because see, when Modern Warfare 2 came out and everybody was like, this is the greatest thing, it's an evolution on COD 4, I was the only person in our friend group who was kind of like, I think it's all right. It's just, it's good. It was a good game, but I would not say
that. I would say there was too much chaos in it.
It wasn't an evolution on COD 4, in my opinion.
Well, because it really changed the dynamic of kill streaks for a while there.
It did.
And it kind of broke it in a way, like that, and like Black Ops kind of broke kill streaks. And this is, and I know it's what gets people like Max super hard, is to have just complete fucking chaos domination kill streaks, where the kill streaks in COD 4, where everyone had the same 3. It's a UAV, strike jets, and then a chopper. And by the time you get to like Blops 1 or 2 or whatever, you have chopper gunners, you have attack dogs, you have all this advanced UAV shit. Like, and that's what people like Max want, is they want to have like complete just domination, just like, yes, nobody gets to play but me, which to me is just like the epitome of fighting game mentality, is just like, only I get to play the game.
Yeah, the
Like,
guy you're playing against
make,
doesn't get to play.
make it so the other player cannot even play the game. Like, completely control it. But I would say that, like, honestly, like, and the problem is like, okay, so you went from a game that was just like wildly imbalanced with kill streaks, but then instead of just kind of like going back to COD 4, they just slowly nerfed kill streaks. So you still had a shit ton of kill streaks, but they were boring.
Yeah, they're just
They
not
weren't
as
as fun.
good.
So it was like the worst of both worlds, where it wasn't like we're gonna try to make it's very much like Street Fighter 2, is COD 4, right? And then like Modern Warfare, maybe the first Black Ops, that's Marvel versus Capcom 2. Just way too much shit, right? And
Mhm.
then there's original Street Fighter 2, Marvel 2, and then everything just is like this weird chip away, so that you get like this Marvel's, just whatever game that it feels like they're trying to solve too many problems but not like committing. So you ended up with like this really bleh. And I feel to this day it's still just kind of bleh with regards to like kill streaks or whatever.
Right.
Like, because it's like, to me, I'm like, you need to go back to just straight up, it's just straight up gunplay, like COD 4 style gunplay, or you need to go back to just like fucking ridiculous kill streaks. Because I don't think this sort of in between, to me, it never felt as good. Like,
Right.
and I've never ever been as into Call of Duty as I was with COD 4.
I agree. Actually, like kill streaks are actually my least favorite part of COD in
Yeah.
probably since 4. And so what I always did is um I just run the base, like I think now it's like 4
Hmm.
4 6 something, but I'll still run UAV airstrike, and I think I do like Harrier now or something, just like shit I don't have to manage, that I can just
Yeah.
like throw out when I want to use them, and they don't get nearly as many kills as like your chopper
Right.
gunners and shit
Yeah.
like that.
So,
But
and for me, it's very much like either don't have them, like either drop it all the way back to where like it's the same basic three for everyone, so you really
right,
don't have them, or just go all out with them. But I hate this sort of like there's a bunch of different things that do different then and then and then. It's like one or like either let me focus on the game or because some people it's all about focusing on the kill streaks. Like they want to get the chopper
right.
gunner so that they can have control of the pilot, and then you just shoot people like fish in a barrel. But they strangely don't have the I don't know why, but like anti-air stuff's never been as fun after Modern Warfare 2 as Modern Warfare 2. Um,
Well, they had a lot more options and
yeah, well, if you
for
remember
anti-air.
me in Modern Warfare 2, I was a terror with those.
Yeah, you just
Um,
ran with them everywhere, and so you take out everybody's UAV. Well, that happens in like the COD now. Is like UAVs don't last very long at all,
yeah,
or like everybody runs counter UAV. Like,
again, like fixing problems they created almost.
right. Um, it's one of the reasons why I kind of like Warzone is where it's just not like a lot of like you can get airstrikes and shit like that, but you're not gonna you're mostly gonna be doing gunplay.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Um, I do. I don't know if I'd say that like Call of Duty necessarily totally petered off, because now they're having a bookend where I think like their Modern Warfare Remake 1 and Modern Warfare 2 now are both pretty strong games. Warzone's pretty strong. So I do feel like it's got this dip where it's like COD 4 was like, oh my God. Yeah, Modern Warfare 2 is maybe a little bit less. And then what would be the bottom of the barrel would be like what, Advanced Warfare?
which is weird because I heard that like we played that was one with Kevin
Spacey
Kevin
is
Kevin
villain.
touch people inappropriately. Yeah, Spacey. Um,
Kevin Invade Your Spacey.
Kevin invades your Spacey. Yeah, we played that one. It was okay campaign wise. And there was the beyond that. There was Infinite Warfare,
Oh, it's
the
Infinite Warfare, not
Space War,
Advanced.
and apparently that one has an excellent campaign, but the rest of it is like, meh. So there was a weird period of time, like during the start of the PS4 era, where like they had really good campaigns
Right.
and just really blech multiplayer.
Well, Black Ops 4 had good multiplayer, but I don't
It
think
had
I
only
ever.
multiplayer.
Yeah, okay. I was gonna say I don't think I ever played campaign on Black Ops 4.
No, you
I don't
didn't
think
because there
there's
wasn't any.
because yeah, there wasn't any. That's right.
I know you and I played at E3 one year, Black Ops 3.
Yes.
We went in and we did a bunch of that. We enjoyed it. We actually did really well, I believe, in the rounds we played, but we both were kind of like hated the whole, Tribe's air boots or whatever, rocket boots.
Yeah,
And so we were kind of like, really wanted to go back to boots on the ground, which became a thing, right after.
very soon after, yeah. And also the thing is, like, when you say you do well at E3, I've never, I don't think I've ever been at an E3 where like a game journalist is just actually like killing it at a game. Like every game journalist I've
Fair.
ever, and I'm not even trying to be a dick to him, just like every game journalist I've seen play a game at E3 is just fuck off. Like one time I was in line for Odyssey, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and like there was a game journalist in front of me, not an older guy. Like it would like it's not like the LA Times where they were playing Kingdom Hearts and it took a half hour to explain how to use the controller to the guy. That's different. That dude was old and probably just got put on that beat. This was like a 20 something guy who I don't know which game company was for. And even if I did, I wouldn't like shout out specific, but they were playing Odyssey and having like the hardest time riding the fucking horse. Just like getting the horse to the thing. And granted, at E3, the build of Odyssey, like I remember thinking the controls were pretty jank. When I played it later, I didn't have those same problems. I don't know if they updated it. I'm not saying they did, or if I just got less dumb, which is also possible. But I remember sitting there for the full 15 minutes waiting my turn, watching this dude have a very hard time getting on the horse, getting the horse to the like that's all they did of it. They took notes and then walked away, and that was their impression of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. And I
It's
have
very much like my USA Today story of Breath of the Wild.
yeah, God.
Only he gave up after 5 minutes.
Well, more power to him. I just like
He
I've
gave
never
me an extra turn.
so the idea that we played Black Ops 3 and stomped, and we both did like Call of Duty tournaments at one point and stuff. Not to say that we're super good, but we did play Call of Duty 4 competitively. So then to say we stomped at E3, it's not saying a whole lot.
It really,
Like,
it's not.
half the people that were there probably like this is the first time they were using a controller. But it was very funny. And it also gave me an outsized like it made me more excited for Blops 3 than I think I would have had I played online, like an online
The
beta.
beta, yeah.
Yeah. Blops 4 I got on a whim and I liked it. I played a lot of it, but I just like I was done with future stuff. I think at that point, like future warfare. In terms of campaign, I'd say the two new CODs are both really strong, but I actually think this one, MW2, has a stronger campaign than the last one, personally. And I know that's probably opposite of what most people, but I felt like the last campaign for Modern Warfare sort of petered out where this one has more build. Like I felt like the
Well, there
really
you go.
cool stuff was in the early parts of the game in the last one, and this one had like builds into really cool stuff.
And that was the thing, like, because like COD 4 had a really good campaign start to finish.
Oh yeah.
You
Well,
know,
it was like it was the first time I played a game where I was like, this is like a fucking movie.
Yeah.
Like, it felt very cinematic the whole time.
Yeah, and it wasn't like massive cutscenes all the time either. It was actually just cinematic, just
Right.
everything, the way the level was built and done, and because you start with that going on that abandoned ship in the middle of the ocean before it sinks, and then and then you get the all gillied up moment, and then there's like that crazy chase at the end where you try to stop the ICBMs, and then that pursuit on the highway and all that crazy shit. So like COD 4 is a great campaign. Black Ops 2 has a really good campaign as well. Although
I gotta replay it.
Well, it's crazy because it does shit like Perfect Dark like promised to do, like, but they had to scale back and stuff. Where like literally how you play out a level will determine how the level ends, and there's multiple endings and shit.
That's pretty cool.
There's some really really cool stuff in the campaign for Blobs too. I will say I didn't even notice this because I wasn't paying attention, but like because it deals with like the 80s and future, like near future, like they literally have, and I believe he voiced himself, fucking Oliver North in the game.
Really?
Yeah, all patriotized up too, as like as a heroic general character at some point in the game. And I'm like,
They got real Oliver North to
Oliver
do it?
North. Yes.
Wow, that's pretty
Yes.
nuts. Anybody
I
who
know
doesn't
I
know
know
why that's
General
funny,
Noriega's in the game too, and he is a voiced prominent character in the campaign.
but not by obviously not by Noriega himself.
Obviously not by no.
Like, anybody who, doesn't know why that's fucking crazy, go ahead and Wikipedia Oliver North.
Or just listen to the American Dad song on him.
Yeah, or do that. Um,
Like, cause I remember someone talking about it, like, I can't like fucking god like this guy was like, I goddamn Oliver North is in the
that's
game voicing himself, and they're making him look like this prestigious general. I'm like, do you realize this man committed treason?
that's wild. I guess I really need to go back and play it.
See, I didn't remember that either, and I saw like the screenshots of the cutscenes. I was like, oh, I guess so. Huh?
Oh shit. Any final game or final thoughts on games that start strong, end weak?
Um, the thing is, I think you got to be careful about when you're making a game. You design a vertical slice, right, and it's pretty fun. You got to really sit there and wonder, does this carry the whole time? And then I think another thing too is that I don't want to say it because I don't think it's hit yet, but I'm actually getting kind of scared a little bit with God of War Ragnarok, where I'm like, is this game getting a little bloated like Last of Us 2 was? Like, is it maybe going a little too indulgent? Could maybe they have trimmed the fat a little bit on the main story and like kept, it's plenty of side quest stuff in the game, which is all
Yeah.
great so far, but like I'm kind of worried that we're gonna get to a Last of Us 2 scenario where like this is just
Starts to
bloated.
drag.
Like, even if it's good, it didn't necessarily need to be this drawn out or go this long.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only probably like halfway or maybe a little bit further through.
That's the thing. I don't know how far I am into the game, so I'm like, I don't know. It hasn't gotten to that point, but I'm afraid it might.
I feel like the sentiment online is that everybody gets their due, and it's very like satisfying ending. Luckily, I haven't seen any spoilers. Not that I really give a shit about spoilers, but since I'm getting to play it when it's first out, avoid spoilers where I can.
Yeah.
But it will be interesting to see that. My only complaint about the game thus far is that the map is basically fucking useless. Like, I don't know why they have.
Kind of true.
And the compass is just a mess. Like, the compass, the fucking objective thing that you're trying to follow just like whips around constantly. And
It really does.
It's like, okay, I got to go west. And then just like hope.
You kind of got to like not look at it. You get general ideas, kind of, because
useless.
All the time. It like flips, east to west on the compass. Yeah.
It makes no sense. Don't even know why you gave me a compass,
true.
bro. Like,
it's almost better. Like, it's better just like look at the main map and then just sort of like guesstimate your way from there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's exactly what I do. And the main map it's zoomed out enough to where if there's any sort of like, if there's icons in the way and ambiguity, like you're at a T junction, but there's like a few different icons, that you're fucked. Don't just pick one, go down halfway, look at the map. Oh, I've gone the wrong way. Okay, come back.
Yeah.
And that's how I've been doing it. That's really kind of my only complaint on the game. And it's such a minor complaint. Like it's sort of
my complaints are the same with the last one. I think it's too zoomed in on combat. Anytime
you want it to pull back out.
Yeah, anytime there's more than 3 enemies attacking you at once, it's kind of a clusterfuck. Like the danger compass, you start having to like constantly roll away from that because like you have no idea where these enemies are, and sometimes they're above. So like you'll say like, oh, someone's attacking to the side or behind you, so you roll back or you turn around, try to swing back, nothing's there. Oh, it's because this guy was above and just lobbing some shit at you, and that gets real annoying.
I haven't had
the parry timing window. I don't like. It's predictive, not reactive. So you gotta learn an enemy's pattern. Like you can't react to an enemy swinging at you. It's not like Devil May Cry or a fighting game where it's like you press the button the second the attack makes impact. You got to press it before, because Kratos has to swing his arm out and the thing has to go vroom. So
Right.
you have to put a little bit of time between you and the parry before it'll actually parry, and that bugs the ever loving shit out of me.
I haven't had a problem with that yet, but maybe this game is just built to be kinder to people that don't play a lot of action games.
It's more just because I'm coming at it from a mentality of Devil May Cry, Bayonetta
Right.
style, and
Which are both
it's
very solid, very
yeah, but it's a different mindset. It's a different type of fighting system, and I think I'm trying really too hard to make it play like a game it's not.
hmm.
So I don't necessarily think this is the game's fault, but I don't necessarily think I like I still don't like the timing of the parry window. It's too you have to hit it too far in advance.
Well, in closing, I looked like a big old dickhole because I was like, man, I really fucking hate the NPCs constantly telling me what to do. And just like every game, I complain about when like they're talking to themselves or something like
Yeah.
that. And then I saw this tweet from like the developers who are like, it's actually for accessibility so that more people can play. And I was like, oh, you're right, I'm the bad guy. I'm sorry. Like, I'm an asshole, but it
Yeah,
still
and now
annoys the
there's the
fuck out of
argument of
me.
whether or not that should have been something you could turn on or off. I don't
Oh, that'd
know.
be great. Yes, let me turn that shit off. That just annoys the fuck out of me. Like it's not even so much that I dislike hints, especially like, okay, if I'm having a hard time with something,
I'm
sure, give me a
surprised it
fucking
wasn't
hint.
like press down on the D-pad to like get a hint, and the character will then say their line. You know,
Would be fantastic. Would be, even fucking The Last of Us 2, you have to hit a button to get a hint.
Hmm. You know what? I guarantee you the next God of War will do that.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because
Yeah.
everyone I've seen this from a lot of people saying, they like Mike, he's bitching about like, the whole tell me what to do kind of thing. It
Well,
drives everyone.
it's so nutty. Like it just drives me insane. It's everything you hate about backseaters while
Well,
streaming.
to me, I'm just like, I think in my brain, I'm like, this is Sony first party games. They just do this constantly.
Well, yeah, but
Like,
Bethesda did it with all their games. Dishonored had he literally would like you'd hear the objective. They'd tell you this is the objective, and then you're going to go, well, I guess I better get over to objective. Oh, I guess it's down this hallway. Oh, I better sneak past these guys. Why are you talking to yourself while sneaking
that was
around a
two.
house? Yeah, that
He
was
was
two.
he was
In one,
mute
it
in
wasn't
part
nearly
one.
as yeah. In part one, there was no problem. In part two, he literally never shut the fuck up.
I
Like,
remember hearing that because they're like, "Oh, we're giving a voice to Corvus in part two," and then everyone's like, "Wow, he fucking talks all the time." It
yeah, really
wasn't like, "Oh,
justifying the budget on that one.
like it wasn't like, oh, he says some things in cutscenes. Now he just never fucking stops talking."
Just always. Or you make a noise that was loud. Oh my fucking god. Like, I'm just no. But
It's immersive. It's immersive.
I'm very immersed. It works for games where like you're playing as Batman. I think a dude on the podcast Discord. For those of you on the YoVideogames Discord, there's a podcast section if you want to talk about podcast episodes with other dudes. Talking about like an Arkham Asylum or an Arkham Knight, it's not as bad because it's Batman sort of like doing the detective narration
Hmm.
and stuff, and so it's
R.I.P.
very
R.I.P. Kevin Conroy.
yeah, goddamn. Too young too. He's only like 60 something, right?
Yeah,
Very
66.
all right.
Apparently, it was a very short, sudden bout of fight with cancer, and just
That sucks. By all accounts, he's supposed to be a great guy too. But to switch gears on that really fast, apparently it works there narratively, and when it works narratively, all right. And like, thank God it's not just Kratos saying it to himself in this. It's
yeah,
like another character
it's
getting
usually
frustrated with
Atreus
you.
or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah,
And that helps a lot. It's just that they do it too fast too. Like
yeah,
sometimes
like
10 seconds in,
immediately.
yeah, they'll be like, "Hey, here's the answer." What the fuck are you? Stop it! Don't
I
do
think
that.
having a button for like an inner monologue button
That'd be
is
cool.
probably the way to go on it. Where it's just like you want to solve
Yeah.
yourself, the character never talks, and then it's finished. If you do get stuck, it's just like monologue button, and then it'll give you like a vaguer hint, and then start with like have a series of vague to more clear hints.
And the last one is him just
But that's
turning the
a
camera and screaming at you.
granted that is a lot of work.
It is.
We are asking for a lot there out of it, and then if they don't do it, I get it, but yeah, they're gonna have to. I think after this, they're gonna have to sit there and really ask themselves. I'm like, okay, which way do we go about this? Because
Well,
like,
they just turn it to a toggle. Less
Yeah.
work. You just got to turn on the toggle. Or even less work, just don't have it. just don't have that shit. But I realize, yes, I am the bad guy on this. That's a perfect way to close. Andrew's the bad guy.
I mean, to be fair, there are times where I swear to God, I'm looking at shit at God of War, and there's like the graphics are so nice and so detailed. I don't know what I'm looking at or what I should be looking at to solve them, because everything is just like there's so much visual information on the screen
There
that
are
I don't
some
know
areas
what
like
I'm.
that, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's very obvious, and sometimes it's obvious, and I just didn't see it. I just didn't pick up on it for whatever reason.
Right.
And he doesn't have detective vision where you press a button and it highlights what you're supposed to interact with, which is
Right.
like practically a cheat.
And I
But,
like it.
but yeah, like I'll be honest, there are times where I'm like, wait, hey, we got to get through this. I'm looking at this like, do what now? And it's like, oh, that throw the X over there. Okay.
It's not the worst thing. I totally admit it as a pet peeve. Like
Yeah.
no one else has to be annoyed at this thing. It just annoys me when it happens too much. And again, having it be other characters not nearly as bad as having Kratos just talk to himself the whole time.
God, I must get to the top of this. I must throw Axe over here to do this. It would be so weird if Kratos was monologuing to himself.
I am a laconic Spartan. Here's a detailed explanation of what I should do. Let me talk it out. But as always, we've got some patrons to thank. If you guys have a game that started as a 10 and ended, let's say it doesn't even have to be horrible, it ended as an 8. It just downgrades as time went on. Or maybe it seems like they just ran out of time to keep the game going.
Yeah.
Let me know what that is. Comment on YouTube, comment on Twitter. Having conversations about video games would be great on Twitter now, because it seems like you don't see any of that shit anymore. It seems like none of my interests are what I see in Twitter. It's all news and people telling me why it's the end of the world. So
get it in on Twitter before it's gone.
Yeah, would love just a quick tweet being like, hey, here's a game that started out really strong and then ended up sucking nuts. I don't know. I would appreciate that. You can hit me up at Funk Machine, PhunkMachine, or you can hit up Matt at Assist Me Doom. Doom Assist Me.
Doom Assist Me on Twitter.
And then Assist Me Doom on Twitch. So you can watch him play a perfect game, a 10 out of 10 game, like, say, Sonic. But
Mania.
Sonic Mania, sure. Yeah, that's way to save it. I forgot it was Sonic Frontiers. That's the only reason I didn't say Frontiers.
I already deleted the game. And to be fair, all the classic Sonic games, the last levels kind of suck.
Oh, is it that the level sucks, or is it that just like the premise is done? You're done with the premise by the time you get there.
It's more just because like it's the last level, so it's got to have all like the really hard to navigate, challenging shit, and it's just not as fun as any level before it.
Right.
By proxy of being the last level, I guess. So that always happens. Sonic games is like you get to the last zone, quit.
Our producers for this episode are Scrunami, Kuroi35, Hyperviper89, Ziggy Z, and Online Persona. Thank you, dudes, and we will catch you next time.
Later, dudes.